We're about to take a look at the idea of wireless roaming. What does that really mean? We'll find out more right here on IT Pro TV.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
All right, we've actually jumped into the realm of wireless roaming, and here, of course, to help us out is going to be Anthony Sequeira as we dive into this topic. So, Anthony, what it comes down to is a famous song by Gene Autry, "Don't Fence Me In." So, tell me what we're talking about when we talk about wireless roaming here.
You got it. And I got to say, my favorite on this topic, I am not going as far back in time as you are. Mine is the B-52s.
Oh, yeah.
Roam if you want to.
Well, I wasn't daring enough to sing it, so you got me at least on one up on that one.
So, what we mean, Ronnie, when we talk roaming is just the fact that we are going to have a user. In fact, you and I do this here in our enterprise.
Right.
We grabbed our laptops, Ronnie and I, and we went from our desks into a separate part of the facility. We never lost wireless connection, but we did jump from one AP to another. So we are talking about being able to roam throughout the enterprise, hopping from AP to AP, and never losing connection. And I'm very impressed. Good job, Nate, the head of IT here, because I didn't lose connection when I did that.
Now, speaking of that, right, most people may not understand that because they've probably grown up with it to a sense, right, that it's been transparent in the background.
That's right.
So until that point where you've actually experienced it before, when you had multiple access points and then you would move from one area to the next and you're like, oh, it dropped, and then you have to kind of wait and pick it up. They really don't understand this concept of roaming and why it's so cool that we're not dropping.
That's right. We want it to be completely transparent for our users.
Right.
That's our goal. From the Encore perspective on this, we don't have a ton to worry about other than a knowledge of the different categories in how this is accomplished. We begin with the autonomous access point environment, and that is not the emphasis. As you might guess, it's going to be on the lightweight environment. But it is interesting that in the autonomous environment, Ronnie, it's quite simple. I bet you were teaching this in the CCNA material. You've got the access points. You give the cells just that right amount of overlap.
Right.
I think like 15%.
Right at 15%.
Okay.
Yep.
Whew. Pulled that one out from long ago. Yeah, so that 15% overlap, and the person goes from the one autonomous access point to the next. The SSID name is kept the same, and they're able to roam and not lose their connectivity. In that world, it is more of the site survey that you would do to make sure you've got the right amount of overlap, and then everything just kind of works. In the lightweight AP world, it gets a little more, not complicated, but there's just a wider variety of stuff that needs to take place. And of course, there's more that could go wrong. But I think most importantly, it's the fact that once again, the brains of the operation is handling this. And what's the brains of the operation? What's the control plane? It's the wireless LAN controller. We remember that there's the CAPWAP tunnels. So that's part of this process now.
Right.
We didn't have that at all in the autonomous world. So there has to be this seamless, rebuilding of CAPWAP tunnels. Even there's instances where a new kind of transient tunnel gets constructed. So all of that has to be functioning. And the wireless LAN controller is great at this. We just, again, really need to be aware of the categorizations. And one of the key categorizations that we have, as you can see, is intra-controller and inter-controller.
Okay.
So as you might guess, it's super simplistic behind the scenes. When a user, Ronnie, goes from one AP to another, but those APs are maintained by the same controller. Okay. So that's the intra-controller move. Clearly, that's going to be way more simple, right? Because the controller possesses all of the intelligence that it needs because the move is right on its infrastructure. The intercontroller is where we need, as engineers, to make sure we've set it up properly, that the wireless LAN controllers can communicate any information they need to between each other to make sure there's no problem for the client. In that regard, one of the challenges is to do this quickly and to maintain the authentication piece.
Okay.
That is what Cisco and other vendors discovered was the big challenge here. You've got the client all properly authenticated against one controller, and then they roam and hit an AP that's maintained by a totally different controller. If you have to do all of the authentication piece again, that's tricky. That could introduce latency. The client out there could be like, whoa, like at the very least, my internet just hiccuped, right? That's what they're going to see. So here on screen for us, I have 3 different technologies to do this. Great news. The wireless LAN controller supports all 3. So if you adopt for a simple key caching mechanism on the WLCs, or if that's the way you decide to go, the WLCs support that. There's an 802.11r.
Never heard that one before.
I had not either. So this was new to me in prepping this content. That's an approach that can be used. It's obviously a standardized approach to sharing the credential information. And then notice the top one. This one I would definitely know. It's the Cisco centralized key management. So there is this whole Cisco proprietary approach. And notice, no surprise, remember we talked about those Cisco client extensions?
Right.
This is the classic example of where your end clients out there would need to be participating in the Cisco client extensions because, again, this is a Cisco proprietary approach. And if their client hardware and software isn't compliant with Cisco's methodology here, they wouldn't be able to do this style of roaming. And again, 3 different approaches here, supported on the latest Cisco equipment. And this is all about one thing, making the authentication not be a bottleneck as they do on inter-controller roam. All right, so I hope I've made that clear. This has to do with the ease of authentication, intercontroller, all 3 options are supported.
Yeah, now as you were talking, I looked at 802.11r up a little bit. The most interesting thing that I found immediately, since it talks about the idea of authentication, is that they recommend, or that you're probably going to be using 802.1x for the authentication piece
Great
as
point.
well. So just kind of make sure that you understand some of that as well, about what maybe the authentication piece is to each one of those, because you may find out like the key caching may actually cache something a little bit different, or may cache more, do more, just like the idea of that key, the Cisco management system that's out there too.
And you know, it's interesting, Ronnie, if you're doing the sophisticated 802.11x, that means you're probably using Cisco ICE technology as well. So now you've got the identity service engine working in conjunction with the wireless LAN controller. And let's expand that discussion for a minute here. Remember what Encore kind of assumes. We assume a couple things in this course, right? That's fun to think about. You have like unlimited budget, right? Like budget's not an issue. You know, we are not talking about a small shop where we just do, some low-end wireless LAN controller and a bunch of APs. No, we're thinking on a huge enterprise scale in Encore. So you would have a Cisco DNA center, you would have an ICE, you would have the wireless LAN controllers, you would have all of those working together. And in fact, the wireless LAN controllers would be part of your SD access solution potentially. So Just remember that we're focused down on the wireless part right now, but don't forget to mentally kind of expand that out to the other technologies that we've talked about.
And that's important in terms of design, and the Encore does hit a bit on design as well.
It really does. You know, I'm teaching without Ronnie. It makes me sad. But I'm teaching one of the very design-specific electives. I call them electives for the CCNP.
Yeah, they call them specializations.
Okay, specializations, yeah. I got to get used to that language. I keep calling them the electives. But it's the NSLED. It's the ENSLD, and it's all about design. And it's a really, really cool course. I encourage you to check it out. There's a few episodes published, and obviously we're going to have a lot more coming soon. And that's where we just 100% talk about designing these solutions. So when we look at the lightweight environment, we look at the intercontroller, here's some other terminology that I want to explain and I want you to be responsible for. First of all, you could have a layer 2 intercontroller roam. Wow, pretty simple. You know, it doesn't need to involve the layer 3 at all. There is this layer 2 domain that's spanning the multiple controllers, and it's all handled at layer 2 as that client roams. But you could have a situation where they are going to roam from layer 2 domain to different layer 2 domain. That gets, let's just say, the most sophisticated. And what you end up having happen is a wireless LAN controller becomes what's called the anchor wireless LAN controller. And then there's the other wireless LAN controller, typically the one that the client has moved to. So the anchor is typically the initial one, and then they move to the other wireless LAN controller, and that now is termed the foreign wireless LAN controller. And that's when you have this structure that's built between those two WLCs, and what it's able to do is have them keep their same IP address.
Right.
So that is obviously a huge advantage to make all of this go smoothly and be transparent to the user. Now, I think you can check, I think it's the last thing we have to discuss in this topic. This wasn't a very broad or deep topic for us to discuss at the Encore level, but I think the last thing we have to discuss, Ronnie, is the mobility group. What's the deal here? Well, if we are not an enterprise like this at IT Pro TV. There's just a few of us that are roaming, and it's a layer 2 roam that we do. But if you are in that massive enterprise and it's a roaming workforce in that enterprise, then you would design this to be even more efficient. And how you do that is with mobility groups.
Okay.
You can take your wireless LAN controller and set them up in these mobility groups. So now they're tuned. The wireless LAN controllers are like tuned to be able to do the both layer 2 and layer 3 roams much more efficiently. As you might guess, the wireless LAN controllers are sharing more information with each other more aggressively to accommodate all of this roaming that's taking place.
All right, Anthony. Well, thank you for helping us to understand a little bit more about this key concept of roaming. Most of us, like I said at the beginning, we don't even think about it because we probably haven't had to deal with it. We just assume that our wireless is going to work. And so that's something that's not there. But as we get ready for the Encore exam, you want to make sure that you pay attention to technologies that Anthony has mentioned here in this episode, as well as some of the key concepts that he's been talking about as well. All these are actually going to help you too. Well, this is a great place for us to end this episode then. Signing off for IT Pro TV, I'm your host, Ronnie Wong.
And I'm Anthony Sequeira.
Stay tuned right here for more of your CCNP Encore show.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.